When you think of world building, what comes to mind? Is it, sprawling maps, cool made-up languages? Well, today, we're going to dig way deeper. We're going to uncover what makes a fictional world feel truly alive, and not just a pretty backdrop.
All right, let's just jump right in with the big idea for today. If it happens because the world makes it inevitable, that's strong world building. This right here is our guiding star for this whole explainer. It's the difference between a story that feels kind of forced and one that feels totally, completely real.
So, let's start by going, beyond the map. We're going to move past just the surface level stuff, the aesthetics, to really get at the heart of what makes a world tick.
Okay, so here's the definition we're working with. World building is the craft of designing a reality with internal logic, cultural memory, and lived consequences. But the really crucial part, the so what of it all, is the goal. Stories should emerge naturally from that world, not feel like they're being forced onto it. See, the world isn't just the stage, it's the engine that's actually driving the whole story.
And, to be super clear, let's talk about what world building is not. It's not just the pretty stuff, the maps, the names. It's not only for fantasy or sci-fi either. I mean, any story with a distinct setting has a world, and it's definitely not just an excuse to dump a ton of backstory on the reader. All that stuff, those are just the outputs, not the system itself.
A better way to think about it is like this. World building is the operating system. It's the code running in the background, underneath everything else. It dictates how everything in that reality works, from physics to social rules. The story you're reading, that's just the app running on top of that OS.
Now, of course, not all operating systems are designed the same way, right? And this brings us to a really fundamental choice in world-building design: the difference between soft worlds and hard worlds.
Let's break these two approaches down. On one side, you've got soft world building. This is all about mood, theme, and symbolism. The rules are pretty flexible. Often they're not even stated out loud. The logic feels more emotional, almost mythic, perfect for fairy tales or allegories. Then, on the other side, you've got hard world building. This is obsessed with systems, cause and effect, and structure. The rules are super explicit and they are enforced. The logic is more mechanical, almost scientific. This is the stuff that makes for great deep sci-fi or those really intricate political fantasies.
But, and this is so important, this is not a value judgment. It's not about one being better than the other. In fact, if you think about it, most of the strongest, most memorable worlds out there are actually a hybrid. They blend that atmospheric feel of a soft world with the rock-solid consistency of a hard one.
Okay, so how does this all look in practice? To make these ideas a little less abstract, let's really dissect the anatomy of a living world. We're going to use a case study that really leans into hard world building to see how it's put together.
All right, strength number one of a world like this is something called operative philosophy. Now, what does that mean? It means that beliefs aren't just things characters say. They're actual mechanics that have real consequences. Desire has rules. Authority has limits. Even what a person says or what they don't say has a measurable impact. People act because of this powerful mix of doctrine and consequence.
Strength 2. Interlocking systems. This is where a world becomes so much more than just the sum of its parts. Everything is connected. Spirituality is tied to the law. Family structure directly impacts civic order. The very language people speak literally shapes how they think. The point is, you can't just change one piece without causing ripples everywhere else.
And all of this leads to what is maybe the single most important rule for making a world feel real. Here it is. Characters cannot escape the rules, period, full stop.
So, what does no escape actually mean in practice? Well, it means there's no such thing as plot immunity for the hero. No moral shortcuts just because they're the good guy. And no emotional exemptions because, they're having a bad day. When a rule is broken, any rule, by anyone, the world itself, the system, responds. And that is what gives a world real weight.
Okay, that's the theory. But how can you tell if a world is really built to last? Let's switch gears and give you a practical tool you can use on any book, movie, or even your own project. We're calling it the 5-question stress test.
Question 1. Can people be wrong in this world and still be human? Think about that. If making a single mistake automatically makes someone a mustache-twirling villain, the world is pretty weak. A strong world, though, it has graded consequences. It allows for human error without demanding total damnation.
Okay, next up, question 2. Do the rules limit the main characters just as much as they limit the side characters?
This one is huge. If your heroes can just magically bypass all the systems that everyone else has to suffer through, the world feels cheap, right? But if they're stuck, if they're constrained by those very same mechanics, now that is a strong world.
Question 3 is a fantastic thought experiment. Ask yourself this. If you took the main plot completely out of the equation, would there still be conflicts in this world? If the answer is no, then your world is just a thin cardboard set piece. But if the answer is yes, if there are inherent tensions, simmering rivalries, and systemic problems that exist all on their own, then you've got a world that is truly autonomous and alive.
All right, on to question 4. Can two intelligent characters disagree without one of them having to be evil? A shallow world makes any disagreement a simple moral failure. But a really deep, well-built world understands that conflict can come from clashing but equally valid worldviews.
And our last question on the stress test: do consequences accumulate over time? In other words, does history actually matter? If everything just hits a reset button after each adventure, it's a pretty soft world. But if past events weigh heavily on present decisions, if the world has a memory, well, that's the signature of a hard, persistent reality.
So, after all of that, what's the ultimate goal here? What are we trying to achieve? That brings us to our final section. The goal is coherence.
We started with this idea, and we're circling right back to it, because it is, without a doubt, the most important takeaway. Nothing happens because the story needs it. Things happen because the world makes them inevitable. The plot should always, always serve the world, never the other way around.
So you see, a world succeeds not because its map is cool, but because of how it functions. It succeeds if characters feel constrained by its rules, but that very constraint makes them feel more alive. It succeeds if we, as readers or viewers, can have a meaningful debate inside the world's own logic. And it succeeds if the outcomes feel totally fair and earned, even when they're painful. And this really gets at the ultimate philosophy. The goal of this kind of design is not to create a comfortable, easy place. The goal is to build a world with a reality that is so consistent, so robust, that it has coherence, especially when it's put under extreme pressure. Which leaves us with this one final thought to chew on. A world is strong not because it's beautiful, but because it can survive honesty. It's not about the pretty facade, it's all about the foundation. And a world that can actually stand up to honest, tough questions, well, that's a world that will truly last.